Imagine a universe where the greatest mystery isn't what lies beyond the stars, but what happened to the species that once conquered them all. For 1,000 years, the Galactic Council has debated the fate of humanity, the bipedal mammals from a small blue world, who somehow built an empire spanning 3 galaxies before vanishing without a trace. Their empty cities became museums, their abandoned ships became legends, and their technological marvels became the foundation of all modern civilization. But what if extinction was never the plan? What if disappearing was just another human strategy in a game the galaxy never understood they were playing? When the first human transmission breaks a millennium of silence, it carries a simple message that will shatter everything the galaxy thought it knew about survival, evolution, and the true meaning of adaptation. Because humans didn't go extinct, they went beyond extinction, into something the universe has never seen before. The galaxy is about to learn why humanity never built monuments to their dead. They built monuments to their future. The quantum resonance chamber deep within the Galactic Council's primary research station hummed with an energy that made Ambassador Keleth's scales itch. For 3 centuries, the Vorthak had served as the galaxy's primary archaeologists, their 6-armed forms perfectly suited for delicate excavation work among the ruins that dotted countless worlds. Today, however, Keleth wasn't examining ancient pottery or deciphering long-dead languages. Today, something was calling back from the void. The signal originated from the Terran exclusion zone, reported Dr. Parker. Melara, her crystalline Zurithi form, refracting the chamber's blue light into prismatic patterns across the walls. Subsector 7G, approximately 47 light-years from where Earth used to orbit. Keleth's primary arms gestured dismissively while his secondary pair continued manipulating the holographic display. Impossible. We've monitored that region for 1,000 years. Nothing larger than an asteroid has moved through that space since the vanishing. The vanishing. Even now, after 10 centuries, the name still carried weight throughout the galaxy. Humanity's disappearance had been so complete, so absolute, that many species had begun to question whether they had ever existed at all. If not for the massive cities left behind on over 3,000 worlds, the abandoned space stations that still orbited dead stars, and the technological artifacts that had revolutionized galactic civilization, humans might have been dismissed as elaborate mythology. The transmission is definitely artificial, Melara insisted, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones that indicated extreme certainty in her species. It's using a frequency modulation that matches known human communication protocols, but the complexity is... She paused, her crystalline features shifting through several colors before settling on a troubled amber. It's beyond anything in our databases. Fleet Commander Thoric stomped forward, his massive granite form causing minor seismic readings on the station's sensors. The Granite Commander's people were among the few species old enough to have actually encountered living humans, though Thoric himself had been barely past his first century during those final days. Now, at nearly 1,200 years old, he was considered one of the galaxy's foremost experts on human warfare and tactics. "Show me the transmission," Thoric rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. The chamber's holographic display shifted, showing a complex waveform that pulsed with patterns too intricate for organic minds to fully comprehend. Mathematical sequences flowed through the visualization like liquid lightning, each pulse carrying information densities that pushed the limits of their translation matrices. "The message appears to be layered," Melara explained, manipulating the display with delicate touches of her crystalline fingers. "Surface level contains basic stellar cartographic data, information about current galactic political structures, technological advancement indices. It's as if someone has been watching and cataloging our development for the past millennium." "Someone has been," Thoric stated with absolute conviction. "The question is from where?" Keleth's middle arms worked frantically at auxiliary controls, pulling up archived data from the Terran archaeological sites. "According to our historical records, humans possess theoretical frameworks for technologies we still consider impossible. Dimensional manipulation, consciousness transfer, matter-energy conversion at the quantum level. Their scientific papers read like fantasy novels to most of our physicists. Perhaps because we've been thinking too small," offered a new voice from the chamber's entrance. Dr. Yasmin Chen Okafor stepped into the room with the fluid grace that had marked her species for millennia, though something about her seemed different. The Shapir were renowned throughout the galaxy for their ability to perfectly mimic any biological form they encountered, and Chen Okafor currently wore the appearance of what their records suggested a human female might have looked like. The choice was considered eccentric by most, but her expertise in xenological psychology was unmatched. "You believe this is genuine human communication?" asked Keleth, all 6 arms pausing in their work. I believe we're about to discover that our definition of human may have been insufficiently broad. Chen Okafor replied, studying the transmission patterns with intense interest. Look at the mathematical foundations underlying this signal. They're not just using our current understanding of physics, they're using principles that suggest a complete reconceptualization of how reality operates at its most fundamental levels. The transmission suddenly intensified, new layers of information cascading through the quantum chamber's displays. Subsonic harmonics filled the air, causing several species' translation implants to struggle with frequencies that seem to exist partially outside normal space-time. It's responding to our analysis, Milara announced with obvious alarm. The signal is adapting in real time to our examination methods. That's impossible, Kelleth protested. The transmission originated over 47 light-years away. Even if they could somehow detect our investigation, the response time assumes communication is limited by light speed. Thoric interrupted grimly, which humans never accepted as an absolute limitation. The display suddenly cleared, showing a simple image that sent shockwaves of recognition through the assembled researchers. It was a star chart, but not any ordinary astronomical map. This showed the galaxy as it existed now, in the present moment, with real-time positions of major fleet movements, political boundaries, and even the precise location of their research station. They know where we are, whispered Milara, her crystalline form cycling rapidly through alarmed color patterns. They know everything where we are, corrected Chen Okafor, pointing to subsidiary data streams that detailed current galactic population figures, technological development indices, and cultural evolution markers. This isn't just observation. This is comprehensive real-time analysis of our entire civilization. The display shifted again, and text began appearing in perfect translations for each species present. The words formed slowly, deliberately, as if whoever was composing them wanted to ensure absolute clarity. To the current inhabitants of the galactic community, greetings from the human diaspora. Your development has exceeded our most optimistic projections. We congratulate you on achieving stable interspecies cooperation and technological integration. Your stewardship of the galaxy has been exemplary. The transition period is now complete. We would like to schedule a formal reunion at your earliest convenience. Silence filled the chamber like a physical presence. Each being present processed the implications of the message according to their species' cognitive patterns, but the conclusions were universally staggering. Transition period, Kelleth repeated slowly. They're suggesting that the past 1,000 years were intentional. A test. Or a preparation, added Thoric, his massive form shifting into what granite body language indicated deep thought. My people's oral histories speak of humans who talked about graduation ceremonies for younger species. We assumed it was metaphorical. Chen Okafor moved closer to the display, her borrowed human features showing expressions of fascination and growing apprehension. Look at the linguistic structures they're using. These aren't the communication patterns of any human language in our historical databases. The syntax is more complex, more layered, as if each sentence is carrying multiple levels of meaning simultaneously. Perhaps because they are, Milara observed, running new analysis protocols on the transmission. I'm detecting quantum-entangled information packets embedded within the message structure. The text we're seeing is just the surface layer. Beneath that are mathematical proofs, technological specifications, and what appears to be... She paused, her colors shifting to deep confusion. Cultural exchange protocols? They're not just announcing their return, realized Kelleth. They're providing a manual for how to interact with them. The transmission continued, new text flowing across the display with hypnotic regularity. Over the past millennium, humanity has undergone significant developmental changes. To facilitate smooth reintegration into galactic society, we have prepared comprehensive briefing materials. Please design appropriate representatives for initial contact protocols. We understand that our disappearance may have caused concern or confusion. Full explanations will be provided during formal proceedings. Concern or confusion, Thoric rumbled, with what passed for dark humor among his people. Their disappearance caused 3 galactic wars, the collapse of 12 major civilizations, and completely restructured our understanding of physics, biology, and philosophy. And they describe it as causing concern, agreed Chen Okafor. Either they're being diplomatically understated, or their perspective on scale has changed significantly. Or both, suggested Milara, analyzing deeper layers of the transmission. I'm beginning to think that whatever humans became during their absence, it's something we don't have adequate conceptual frameworks to understand. The message continued with technical specifications that made the assembled scientists' enhanced minds struggle to keep pace. The mathematical principles being described seemed to treat space, time, matter, and energy as interchangeable variables in equations that redefined the fundamental constants of physics. They are not just offering to meet with us, Chen Okafor realized, her voice carrying the undertones of someone processing information too large for comfortable contemplation. They're offering to teach us how to meet with them. They've become something that requires instruction manuals for basic interaction. Keleth's 6 arms moved in unconscious patterns that indicated extreme cognitive strain. The technological specifications they're providing, these aren't improvements to existing technology. These are descriptions of entirely new categories of reality manipulation. They're talking about engineering space-time itself, about consciousness existing as programmable matter, about converting thoughts into fundamental forces. Which explains why they vanished so completely, Thoric observed with growing understanding. You can't disappear from normal space if you're still bound by normal space's limitations. But if you learn to exist in more dimensions than the rest of us can perceive, then the entire galaxy becomes your laboratory, finished Chen Okafor. And we've been the experiment. The transmission reached its conclusion with a simple but profound statement. Humanity looks forward to sharing our discoveries with our galactic family. Please respond when you are ready to expand your definition of possible. The quantum resonance chamber fell silent as the signal ended, leaving only the gentle hum of station systems and the rapid breathing of several species processing the implications of first contact with a civilization that had transcended the very concepts of space and time. Keleth was the first to speak, his voice carrying the weight of someone who realized that the universe had just become infinitely larger and more complex. We need to contact the full Galactic Council immediately. This changes everything. Everything, agreed Nalara, her crystalline form now a deep, thoughtful blue. The question is, are we ready for our definition of possible to expand? Thoric moved toward the chamber's communication systems, his massive form casting shadows that seemed to dance with new possibilities. Ready or not, it appears we're about to find out what humanity learned in the spaces between stars. And I suspect we're going to discover that 1,000 years ago, they didn't disappear into extinction. They disappeared into evolution. As emergency protocols activated and priority communications crackled to life throughout the research station, none of the assembled beings could have imagined that this first contact would be the simplest part of their interaction with returning humanity. The message had been clear, diplomatic, and comprehensible. The beings who had sent it, however, would prove to be something entirely beyond the galaxy's capacity to predict or prepare for. The human reunion was about to begin, and the universe itself was about to remember why the bipedal mammals from the small blue world had once been considered the most dangerous species in known space. The Galactic Council chamber had never hosted an emergency session quite like this one. Representatives from over 400 species filled the vast amphitheater, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of sounds, lights, and electromagnetic pulses that the chamber's translation systems struggled to process simultaneously. At the center of the ancient structure, a holographic display showed the human transmission on continuous loop, its mathematical complexities drawing gasps of amazement and concern from beings across the galaxy. High Counselor Zephran of the Elder Collective called for order with a resonance that bypassed auditory systems entirely, speaking directly to the consciousness of every being present. The Elders were among the oldest spacefaring species in the galaxy, their gaseous forms having witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations over the past 15 millennia. If anyone had perspective on the significance of humanity's return, it would be them. Esteemed colleagues, Zephran began, their voice manifesting as shifting patterns of light and sound that carried meaning beyond mere words. We face a situation unprecedented in recorded galactic history. A species we believed extinct for 1,000 standard years has not only revealed their survival, but has demonstrated technological capabilities that challenge our fundamental understanding of reality itself. Ambassador Keleth rose from his designated section, all 6 arms moving in formal diplomatic gestures. High Counselor, the mathematical proofs embedded within their transmission have been analyzed by our finest scientific minds across 12 different species. The consensus is both unanimous and disturbing. Humans have developed technologies that operate outside the known laws of physics. Define outside, requested Counselor Tamira of the Hegemonic Union, her 3 heads speaking in perfect harmony. The hegemonic species prided themselves on logical precision, and were notoriously skeptical of claims that couldn't be quantified. Dr. Milara materialized at the chamber's central platform. her crystalline form refracting the presentation lights into dazzling patterns. The transmission contains detailed specifications for what they call dimensional engineering. This involves treating time as a spatial dimension that can be navigated, matter as programmable energy that can be reconfigured at will, and consciousness as a fundamental force equivalent to gravity or electromagnetism. Theoretical impossibilities, declared scientist Prime Vorthak, whose cybernetic enhancements allowed him to process information at quantum speeds. No organic intelligence can develop such capabilities. Even our most advanced artificial intelligences consider these concepts mathematically absurd. Perhaps, suggested Fleet Commander Thoric, from his position among the military representatives, we've been thinking too narrowly about what organic means. Humans always displayed unusual adaptability. Their biological systems were capable of functioning in environments that would kill most species, and their psychological resilience was legendary. What if they found ways to enhance these natural advantages? The chamber erupted in various forms of discourse as hundreds of species debated the implications. The melodic chorus sang complex harmonies that expressed skepticism and fascination simultaneously. The geometric dancers performed mathematical sequences that questioned the fundamental nature of evolution. The deep thinkers radiated thoughtful analysis that influenced every nearby consciousness. High Counselor Zephyran restored order with another consciousness-wide pulse. The question before us is not whether these capabilities are possible, but how we should respond to their demonstrated existence. Dr. Chen Okafor, you've studied human psychology more extensively than anyone present. What do you recommend? Dr. Yasmin Chen Okafor approached the central platform, her current human form appearance drawing uncomfortable glances from several representatives who still remembered the original species. Honored Council, I must begin with a confession. Everything we thought we knew about human psychology appears to have been incomplete. The beings who sent this transmission are using cognitive patterns that extend far beyond anything in our historical databases. She gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show linguistic analysis patterns. Look at the structure of their communication. Each sentence operates on multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. They're not just conveying information. They're demonstrating ways of thinking that our minds can barely comprehend. This isn't technological advancement, this is cognitive evolution. Meaning what, precisely? Asked Administrator Knox of the Commercial Syndicate, his cybernetic implants clicking with rapid calculation. Meaning that when humans disappeared 1,000 years ago, they didn't just advance their technology, Chen Okafor explained, her voice carrying the weight of conclusions that had taken weeks to reach. They advanced their capacity to think, to perceive, to exist. The beings who sent this message may still be recognizably human, but they're operating on levels of consciousness that we don't have adequate concepts to describe. Councillor Braytek of the Warrior Clan slammed a massive fist against his restraint barrier, causing the chamber's structural systems to compensate for the impact. This sounds like a threat assessment. Are we dealing with potential enemies? Unknown, Thoric replied grimly. But consider this. If they can manipulate space-time itself, then traditional military concepts become meaningless. How do you fight an enemy that can alter the battlefield from outside your dimensional framework? How do you defend against beings who might exist in more than 3 spatial dimensions simultaneously? The chamber fell into an uncomfortable silence as the implications settled into various species' consciousness patterns. The reality of their situation was becoming clear. They were potentially dealing with beings who operated on levels of reality that made conventional warfare, diplomacy, or even communication potentially obsolete. There's another possibility, offered archivist Keltam of the Historical Preservation Society, their tentacled form weaving complex patterns that indicated deep consideration. What if this isn't a threat but an opportunity? Humans historically showed remarkable cooperation with other species. Perhaps their evolution includes enhanced capacity for beneficial interaction, or perhaps, countered Security Chief Vex of the Paranoid Collective, their evolution includes enhanced capacity for manipulation and control. A species that can exist outside normal space-time could influence events without our knowledge or consent. Dr. Chen Okafor nodded thoughtfully. Both possibilities must be considered. However, I would point out that their message explicitly congratulated us on our development and described our stewardship of the galaxy as exemplary. This suggests approval rather than conquest intent. Unless, suggested Intelligence Coordinator Ziff, their concept of conquest operates on levels we can't perceive. What if they've been influencing our development all along? What if our exemplary stewardship was actually guided by their unseen hand? The chamber erupted again as representatives processed this possibility. Had their millennium of progress been genuine, or had they been unknowingly following a script written by hidden human observers? The technological artifacts left behind in human cities had indeed accelerated galactic development significantly. Had this been intentional guidance rather than accidental discovery? High Counselor Zefran called for order once more. These speculations, while important, cannot resolve our immediate situation. The transmission has requested formal contact. We must decide how to respond. We need to know more about what they've become, stated Dr. Malera firmly. I recommend that we request detailed information about their current form of existence before agreeing to any direct meeting. I disagree, said Khalif, his primary arms gesturing emphatically. Such a request might be interpreted as suspicious or hostile. Humans always valued directness. We should respond with equal transparency. Transparency about what? Demanded Tamira. We don't understand what we're dealing with. How can we be transparent about our confusion? Admiral Korthek of the Deep Space Fleet raised a gravitational pulse that drew attention to his section. Perhaps that's exactly what we should communicate. Honest acknowledgement of our limitations and genuine interest in understanding their evolution. Humans respected intellectual honesty. Assuming they still think like humans, muttered Security Chief Vex. Chen Okafor stepped forward again, her expression showing the complex emotions that her borrowed human features were capable of displaying. I propose a multi-layered response. We acknowledge their message, express genuine fascination with their development, request clarification about their current nature and capabilities, and invite gradual, carefully monitored contact. And if they refuse gradual contact? Asked Thoric. What if they simply appear wherever they choose, whenever they choose? Beings who can manipulate space-time don't require our permission for anything. Then we'll discover whether their evolution included enhanced wisdom along with enhanced capability, replied Chen Okafor. And we'll hope that 1,000 years of development taught them patience along with power. High Counselor Zefran initiated a formal voting protocol, consciousness links connecting every representative to a unified decision matrix. The options crystallized in the shared awareness: cautious engagement, aggressive investigation, or defensive isolation. As the votes accumulated, Dr. Chen Okafor found herself wondering what the humans had discovered during their millennium away from normal space. Had they found answers to the fundamental questions that plagued all intelligent life? Had they solved the mysteries of consciousness, purpose, and existence itself? Or had they simply learned to manipulate reality so thoroughly that such questions became irrelevant? The voting concluded with overwhelming support for cautious engagement. The galaxy would respond to humanity's return with carefully measured openness, requesting detailed information while expressing genuine interest in reunion. Very well, announced Zefran. We shall craft a response that acknowledges their message, expresses our desire for understanding, and requests detailed information about their current capabilities and intentions. Chen Okafor, you will head the contact team. Your understanding of human psychology, however outdated, remains our best foundation for communication. As the council session concluded and representatives began departing for their respective territories, Chen Okafor remained at the central platform, staring at the continuously looping human transmission. Something about the mathematical patterns seemed familiar, yet impossibly advanced. Like recognizing a childhood melody played by an orchestra that included instruments that hadn't existed when the song was written. Nervous? Asked Thoric, his massive form approaching with surprising gentleness. Fascinated, Chen Okafor replied. And terrified. And hopeful. Humans always made me feel contradictory emotions even in the historical records. I suspect that hasn't changed. What do you think they found out there? Thoric wondered, gesturing toward the display. What could cause such complete transformation? Chen Okafor studied the transmission patterns once more, noting harmonics and frequencies that seemed to exist at the edge of perception. I think they found what every species eventually goes looking for, she said quietly. They found out what comes after evolution, what comes after intelligence, what comes after becoming everything you thought you could become. And what is that? The realization that everything was just the beginning, she replied, watching as the transmission's mathematical proofs continued their elegant dance across dimensions that the Galactic Council's technology could barely detect. I think they found out what it means to graduate from being a species to being something else entirely. As Thoric departed, Chen Okafor began composing humanity's first formal communication from galactic civilization in over 1,000 years. The weight of the moment pressed against her consciousness like gravity from a collapsed star. This response would determine whether humanity's return marked the beginning of a new golden age for galactic civilization or the end of everything they thought they understood about existence itself. Either way, the universe was about to become a much more interesting place. The human response arrived before the Galactic Council's message had even finished transmitting. Dr. Chen Okafor stared at the impossible data streaming across her consciousness interface, her borrowed human features cycling through expressions of amazement and growing apprehension. The response hadn't just anticipated their questions, it had answered concerns they hadn't yet realized they should have. Temporal causality violation, announced Dr. Melara, her crystalline form flickering between fascinated blue and alarmed amber. They responded to our transmission 3.7 seconds before we finished sending it. Not violation, corrected Fleet Commander Thoric, studying the tactical implications on his enhanced display systems. Reconstruction. They're not seeing our message as we send it. They're observing all possible messages we might send and responding to the most probable outcomes. The transmission materialized in the quantum chamber as a three-dimensional construct that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. Text, mathematical proofs, and something that might have been music flowed through dimensions that stretched the translation systems to their theoretical limits. Greetings to the current Galactic Council, the message began, each word carrying harmonic resonances that suggested meanings in languages that didn't yet exist. Your response patterns indicate healthy skepticism combined with genuine curiosity. This is excellent. We anticipated confusion regarding our current nature and have prepared comprehensive explanations. Ambassador Khalid's 6 arms moved in unconscious patterns that indicated extreme cognitive strain. They're using present tense to describe anticipating our confusion, as if they're simultaneously experiencing past, present, and future. Which, according to their mathematics, they are, Chen Okafor observed, analyzing the underlying equations that supported each sentence. Look at these temporal integration formulas. They're not just communicating across space, they're communicating across time. Every word reaches us from multiple points in their timeline simultaneously. The message continued with explanations that rewrote fundamental assumptions about reality. During our absence from normal space-time, humanity discovered that consciousness itself is a fundamental force of nature, equivalent to gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces. However, consciousness operates on dimensional scales that extend beyond the 3 spatial dimensions plus time that most species perceive. They're describing consciousness as physics, Melara translated, her voice carrying harmonic undertones that indicated information overflow. Not metaphysics, not philosophy. Actual, measurable, manipulable physics. By learning to perceive and operate within higher dimensional consciousness space, humanity has gained capabilities that appear miraculous from lower dimensional perspectives. These capabilities include, but are not limited to, existence across multiple temporal coordinates, simultaneously, matter-energy consciousness conversion, and what you might term reality programming. Thoric's massive form shifted into what granite body language indicated deep philosophical contemplation. Reality programming. They're suggesting they can edit the fundamental code of existence itself. To facilitate understanding, we offer the following demonstration. The quantum chamber suddenly filled with presence. Not sound, not light, not any form of energy that their instruments could measure, but an undeniable awareness that something vast and incomprehensibly complex was examining them with the same casual attention they might give to microorganisms under a scanner. Then she appeared. The figure materialized in the center of the chamber, as if stepping through a doorway that existed in more dimensions than their minds could process. She was recognizably human, female, middle-aged, wearing simple clothing that seemed to be woven from crystallized starlight. But everything about her presence suggested depths of existence that extended far beyond the 3-dimensional form they were observing. "Hello," she said, and her voice carried harmonics that resonated through consciousness itself, rather than merely through auditory systems. "I'm Dr. 4. Sarah Chen, though I should mention that I'm currently existing in approximately 47,000 parallel timelines, so this conversation is happening from multiple perspectives simultaneously." The chamber erupted in various forms of panic. Security systems activated, emergency protocols triggered, and several species representatives began generating distress calls that would have summoned entire fleets if Dr. Chen hadn't gestured gently, somehow causing all the alerts to transform into patterns of soothing music. "Please don't be alarmed," she continued, apparently unaware that her casual manipulation of their technology was itself cause for alarm. "I'm only projecting a small portion of my consciousness into your dimensional framework. Think of this as diplomatic avatar. Chen Okafor found her voice first, though it took considerable effort to speak while her mind struggled to process what she was observing. Dr. Chen? I'm Dr. Yasmin Chen Okafor. I've been studying human psychology and culture. Could you explain what happened to your species during the past millennium? The human woman smiled, and the expression somehow conveyed warmth across dimensional barriers that shouldn't have been crossable. Of course, though I should warn you that the explanation might be challenging for minds operating within linear temporal frameworks. She gestured, and the chamber's holographic systems displayed imagery that defied conventional understanding. Solar systems arranged like neural networks, stars pulsing in patterns that resembled thought processes, galaxies connected by streams of pure consciousness that flowed like rivers of liquid light. 1,000 years ago, humanity faced a choice that every sufficiently advanced species eventually encounters. Dr. Chen explained. We could continue developing technology to manipulate our environment, or we could begin developing ourselves to transcend environmental limitations entirely. You chose transcendence, observed Kelleth, his archaeological instincts helping him process the historical implications. We chose expansion, Dr. Chen corrected gently. Transcendence implies leaving something behind. We chose to become more while remaining ourselves. Human consciousness, it turns out, is remarkably adaptable when freed from the assumption that it must exist within a single temporal coordinate and 3 spatial dimensions. Milara's crystalline form cycled through rapid color changes as she processed the implications. You're describing consciousness uploading, but not into artificial systems. Into reality itself. Fractionated by daylight chain in Guardian, Dr. Chen confirmed. Though that's a simplification. We learned that consciousness and reality aren't separate phenomena. They're different aspects of the same fundamental process. By understanding this relationship, we gain the ability to exist as living programs within the universe's basic operating system. Thorek stepped forward, his military training demanding tactical analysis even in the face of the impossible. What does this mean for the rest of galactic civilization? Are you still competitive?
Territorial? Do you have needs that might conflict with ours?
Doctor. Chen's expression showed genuine appreciation for the question. Commander Thorek, I believe? Your reputation as a strategic thinker extends even into higher dimensional space. To answer your question, human nature hasn't disappeared, but it has evolved. We still feel curiosity, affection, the desire to explore and create, but concepts like territorial competition become irrelevant when you can exist in unlimited space and create matter from consciousness. So you don't need anything from us? Chen Okafor asked, sensing that this was somehow the critical question. On the contrary, Dr. Chen replied, we need something that we can't create for ourselves. We need perspective. After 1,000 years of exploring higher dimensions, we've gained incredible capabilities but lost something equally valuable. The ability to experience existence from a limited, linear perspective. We've become too large to appreciate small beauties, too complex to enjoy simple pleasures. The chamber fell silent as the assembled beings processed this unexpected vulnerability. You want to remember what it's like to be us, Chen Okafor realized. We want to remember what it's like to discover. Doctor, Chen confirmed, to learn something genuinely new, to be surprised by the universe, to feel the excitement of solving a puzzle or the satisfaction of overcoming a challenge. When you can perceive all possible outcomes simultaneously, mystery becomes impossible. When you can reshape reality at will, achievement loses its meaning. So this isn't conquest or assistance, Thorek observed slowly. This is cultural exchange. The most profound cultural exchange in galactic history, Dr. Chen agreed. We offer to share our discoveries, our capabilities, our perspective on the deep nature of reality. In return, we hope to learn from your limitations, your linear experiences, your beautiful struggle to understand and grow within the constraints that we've transcended. Khalid's archaeological instincts suddenly provided a crucial insight. The cities you left behind. The technology. It wasn't just abandonment. It was curriculum. You were teaching us. We were preparing you, Dr. Chen confirmed. A species capable of building stable galactic civilization while maintaining individual cultural diversity and biological integrity. You've achieved something remarkable, unity without uniformity. That's a form of sophistication that higher dimensional existence tends to eliminate. Doctor. Milara had been analyzing the energy patterns around Dr. Chen throughout the conversation, and her findings were staggering. You're not just in this chamber. You're somehow present throughout the entire galaxy simultaneously. How many of you are having similar conversations right now? All of us, Dr. Chen replied simply. Current human population is approximately 400 billion individuals existing across roughly 3 million dimensional coordinate systems. Each of us is engaging with your civilization at multiple points of contact simultaneously. We're having this exact conversation in several million variations across different probability streams to find the optimal approach for reintegration, Chen Okafor realized. To find approaches that benefit everyone involved, Dr. Chen corrected. We're not seeking to optimize our position. We're seeking to discover mutually beneficial possibilities that none of us have imagined yet. The implications settled over the chamber like a gentle weight. Humanity hadn't returned as conquerors or gods. They'd returned as students, seeking to learn from the experiences they could no longer have themselves, while offering knowledge and capabilities beyond galactic civilization's wildest dreams. What happens next? Asked Thoric, his strategic mind already working through the logistics of integrating post-transcendent humanity into galactic society. That depends entirely on what you want to happen, Dr. Chen replied. We've learned patience along with power. We can proceed at whatever pace feels comfortable, with whatever level of integration seems beneficial. Some of you might choose to explore higher dimensional existence yourselves. Others might prefer to remain beautifully, productively limited. All choices will be respected and supported. And if we choose isolation? Chen Okafor had to ask, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Then we'll continue observing from higher dimensions, protecting your development without interfering, until you're ready for contact. We've waited 1,000 years for this conversation. We can wait another 1,000 if necessary. Doctor. Chen began to fade, her consciousness apparently preparing to withdraw to whatever dimensional coordinate she normally occupied. Think about what you've heard. Discuss it. Debate it. Reach whatever conclusions feel right for your species and your civilization. We'll be here when you're ready for the next conversation. Dr. Chen called Chen Okafor as the figure became translucent. One final question. Do you still consider yourselves human? The woman's smile carried warmth that transcended dimensional barriers. We consider ourselves the best possible version of human. Everything we were expanded into everything we could become. We haven't lost our humanity. We've discovered how much more it could be. As Dr. Chen disappeared entirely, leaving only the gentle hum of quantum systems and the profound silence of minds processing impossible revelations, the beings in the chamber realized that the universe had just become infinitely larger and more wonderful than they had ever imagined. The question now was whether they were ready to grow into that expanded reality, or whether they would choose the beautiful limitations of their current existence. Either choice, it seemed, would be perfectly acceptable to the beings who had once been merely human and had become something that transcended every category, while somehow remaining recognizably themselves. The reunion had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. 3 months had passed since Dr. Sarah Chen's demonstration, and the galaxy was transforming in ways no one could have predicted. The initial shock had given way to something far more complex. A civilization-wide philosophical crisis that was simultaneously the most exciting and terrifying period in recorded galactic history. Ambassador Kelleth stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed human integration facility, watching construction teams from 40 different species work together on structures that defied conventional understanding of architecture. The buildings seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their crystalline frameworks shifting between states of matter while maintaining perfect structural integrity. Human advisors flickered in and out of normal space-time, offering guidance on technologies that required consciousness interface manipulation rather than traditional tools. The Zenthari Collective has formally requested consciousness expansion procedures, reported Dr. Chen Okafor, approaching with data tablets that displayed information too complex for traditional holographic systems. That makes them the 17th species to petition for dimensional transcendence access, and the 32nd species to explicitly refuse any form of human enhancement, Kelleth replied, gesturing toward a section of space where traditional construction techniques were being used alongside impossible human technologies. The Purist Alliance is growing larger every day. The integration period had revealed something unexpected about galactic civilization. When offered unlimited power and transcendent consciousness, roughly half of all species wanted nothing to do with it. The revelation that reality could be programmed like software and consciousness could expand beyond dimensional limitations had triggered the largest philosophical schism in recorded history. Can't say I blame either side, observed Fleet Commander Thoric, his massive form materializing beside them through a human-designed teleportation system that he still didn't entirely trust. The humans are offering godhood, but godhood comes with a price. Once you can perceive everything simultaneously, you can never again experience the surprise of discovery. Is that necessarily bad? asked Dr. said.
Chen Okafor, her current form showing subtle modifications that indicated she'd been experimenting with human consciousness enhancement techniques.
Yesterday I experienced the mathematical beauty underlying quantum mechanics directly, rather than through equations.
It was indescribable. And that's exactly what worries the purists, Kaleth pointed out. If the experience is indescribable, how can we be certain it's beneficial? How can we maintain cultural continuity if we transcend the cognitive frameworks that define who we are? The philosophical debates had become so intense that several species had temporarily suspended diplomatic relations, while their greatest thinkers struggled with questions that had no precedent. What did it mean to be sapient? Was consciousness improvement inherently good, or were there valuable aspects of limited awareness that shouldn't be abandoned? Could a species maintain its identity while fundamentally altering its mode of existence? Incoming communication from the Human Council announced the facility's artificial intelligence, its voice carrying harmonic undertones that indicated human technological integration. Dr. Sarah Chen requests meeting with senior staff regarding developing situation in the outer spiral territories. Dr. Chen materialized in the observation deck with her characteristic disregard for conventional space-time limitations. Today her form appeared more solid than usual, suggesting she was focusing significant attention on their dimensional coordinate. Greetings, she said, her voice carrying the warm complexity that had become familiar over the past months. I'm afraid we have a situation that requires delicate handling. The Kithmori Empire has declared war on the concept of dimensional transcendence. Thoric's strategic instincts immediately activated. Explain. They've declared that human consciousness expansion represents an existential threat to natural galactic evolution, Dr. Chen explained, gesturing to create a holographic display that showed fleet movements across several star systems. They're actively attacking any species that accepts human integration assistance and have begun developing weapons specifically designed to disrupt higher dimensional consciousness. Can such weapons actually harm you? Asked Chen Okafor, though the implications terrified her regardless of the answer. They can, Dr. Chen confirmed, her expression showing concern that somehow made her seem more rather than less human. We exist across multiple dimensions, but we still maintain anchoring points in conventional space-time. Disrupting those anchors can cause significant discomfort. More importantly, their attacks are preventing willing species from exploring consciousness expansion, which violates our fundamental principle of choice. Keleth's analytical mind immediately grasped the deeper implications. This isn't just military conflict. This is a war over the right to evolve. The Kethmori are trying to lock the galaxy into current developmental limitations, which puts us in an impossible position, Thoric observed grimly. If we defend consciousness expansion, we appear to be forcing evolution on unwilling species. If we don't defend it, we're allowing one species to dictate evolutionary choices for everyone else. Precisely the dilemma we hope to avoid, Dr. Chen agreed. We've spent considerable processing power analyzing optimal responses, but every solution carries unacceptable ethical complications. What kind of complications? Chen Okafor asked, though she suspected the answer would be disturbing. We could stop the Kethmori military activities instantly by altering their consciousness to reduce aggressive impulses, Dr. Chen explained. But that would violate their right to maintain their chosen form of existence. Alternatively, we could shield willing species from Kethmori interference, but that would essentially create a two-tier galactic civilization based on access to human protection. And you refuse to simply destroy their military capabilities? Thoric inquired.
We refuse to solve problems through destruction when other solutions might exist. Doctor.
Chen corrected. Humanity's evolution included enhanced ethical sophistication. We can't undo our development by reverting to primitive problem-solving methods. The observation deck fell silent as the assembled beings contemplated the paradox. Humanity had gained godlike capabilities, but had simultaneously developed godlike ethical constraints. They possessed the power to solve galactic conflicts instantly, but were prevented by their own evolved principles from using that power unilaterally. Perhaps, suggested Chen Okafor slowly, this is where our limitations become valuable. We can do things that your ethics won't allow because our development hasn't reached your level of sophistication. Meaning what, specifically? Asked Keleth. Meaning maybe it's time for traditional diplomacy backed by limited military intervention, Thoric explained, understanding immediately. Humans provide support and advice, but galactic civilization handles the problem using conventional methods. Dr. Chen's expression showed surprise that somehow involved probability calculations across multiple timelines. That's actually a solution pattern we hadn't fully explored. You're suggesting a collaborative approach where enhanced beings provide capabilities while limited beings provide decision-making authority? We're suggesting that maybe transcendence and limitation work better together than either works alone, Chen Okafor realized. Humans provide power and knowledge.
We provide perspective and ethical freedom to act within conventional frameworks. Could this actually work? Asked Khalith.
A hybrid approach, where consciousness-expanded beings and traditional species form partnership rather than hierarchy. It could revolutionize everything, Dr. Sias wrote.
Chen replied, her voice carrying excitement that resonated across dimensional barriers. We've been thinking in terms of either transcendence or limitation, but you're proposing integration, symbiosis, each form of consciousness providing what the other lacks. Thoric began pacing, his strategic mind working through the implications. Humans provide knowledge, perception, and capabilities that exceed anything we can imagine. Traditional species provide linear decision-making, limited perspective, and the ethical freedom to take actions that transcendent beings can't justify. More than that, added Chen Okafor, her understanding expanding as the concepts crystallized. Traditional consciousness provides experiences that transcendent consciousness can't have. Mystery, discovery, growth, achievement. Humans don't just want to observe these experiences, they want to participate in them through partnership.
This changes the entire framework, Keleth observed.
Instead of some species choosing transcendence while others remain limited, we're all choosing integration. Everyone contributes according to their form of consciousness. Doctor. Chen was literally glowing now, her form becoming brighter as processing power from across multiple dimensions focused on the conversation. This is why we needed you, she said with obvious delight. We could never have reached this solution alone. Transcendent consciousness is capable of analyzing infinite possibilities, but it's terrible at recognizing elegant simplicities. So, how do we implement this against the Kethmori situation? Asked Thoric practically. We offer them the same partnership we're offering everyone else, Dr. Kesar. Chen replied. Enhanced beings provide analysis and capabilities. Traditional consciousness provides decision-making and action. They can maintain their chosen form of existence while participating in expanded galactic civilization. And if they refuse? Chen Okafor had to ask. Then traditional galactic military forces, supported by human intelligence and logistics, enforce galactic law regarding species self-determination, Thoric answered. But the decisions and actions come from beings operating within conventional ethical frameworks. It's beautiful, Dr. Chen observed, her voice carrying harmonic frequencies that suggested aesthetic appreciation operating on levels beyond normal perception. Instead of transcendence replacing limitation, they enhance each other. Instead of consciousness expansion eliminating traditional awareness, they create symbiosis. As the implications of this new approach spread through their awareness, each being present realized they were witnessing the birth of something unprecedented, a form of civilization that incorporated multiple levels of consciousness without requiring anyone to abandon their chosen mode of existence. We'll need to restructure everything, Kaleth observed. Government, military, science, culture. Everything will need to be redesigned around this partnership model. The good news, Dr. Partner, Chen nodded with obvious satisfaction, is that we have enhanced beings capable of analyzing optimal structures and traditional beings capable of making the necessary decisions to implement them. For the first time in galactic history, we have the tools to create truly perfect institutions. Not perfect, corrected Chen Okafor with a smile, but better than anything either form of consciousness could create alone. Better, agreed Dr. Chen, which is perhaps the most human conclusion possible. Not perfection, but improvement. Not transcendence, but growth. Not replacement, but enhancement. As emergency protocols activated to begin implementing the new partnership approach to the Kethmori crisis, the beings in the observation deck realized they had stumbled upon something that would define galactic civilization for millennia to come. Humanity had returned not as gods or conquerors, but as the perfect complement to everyone else's limitations. The universe was about to discover what happened when transcendence and tradition learned to dance together. 10 years after first contact, the galaxy had become something unprecedented in the recorded history of any civilization. A true partnership between transcendent and traditional consciousness that was reshaping reality itself. Ambassador Kaleth floated in zero gravity within the new galactic assembly chamber, a structure that existed simultaneously in normal space-time and higher dimensional consciousness space. Around him, representatives from over 800 species participated in democratic processes that included both traditional voting and direct consciousness interfaces consensus building. The chamber itself had been designed through partnership between human dimensional engineering and traditional architectural principles, creating a space where every form of awareness could participate fully. Motion to approve the Endorian Consciousness Expansion Research Initiative, announced Assembly Speaker Vorthek, whose cybernetic enhancements now included human-designed consciousness expansion interfaces that allowed him to process information across multiple temporal coordinates while maintaining his species' characteristic logical precision. The vote proceeded through multiple levels of awareness simultaneously. Traditional representatives cast ballots based on linear analysis of costs, benefits, and political implications. Consciousness expanded beings evaluated probability cascades across thousands of potential futures. Hybrid consciousness species who had chosen partial enhancement integrated both approaches in ways that surprised even human observers. Motion approved by unanimous consent across all consciousness levels, Speaker Vorthek announced. The Andorian Research Initiative will receive full galactic support with human technical assistance and traditional oversight. Dr. Yasmin Chen Okafor materialized in the chamber's central nexus, her form now showing the characteristic multidimensional translucency that indicated successful consciousness expansion while maintaining traditional cognitive anchoring. She had become something new, a being capable of operating in higher dimensional awareness, while retaining the linear thinking patterns that allowed genuine surprise and discovery. Honored Assembly, she began, her voice carrying harmonics that reached every form of consciousness present. I'm pleased to report that the Kethmori integration project has exceeded all projections. The Kethmori situation had become the first major test of the new partnership model. Instead of forcing consciousness expansion or traditional military conflict, the galaxy had offered the Kethmori something they hadn't expected: respected participation in enhanced civilization while maintaining their chosen limitations. Human analysis had revealed that Kethmori aggression stemmed from fear that consciousness expansion would eliminate their cultural identity, which was based on overcoming challenges through determination and limited resources. The solution had been elegant in its simplicity. Give them the most challenging and important job in the new galactic civilization. The Kethmori Battle Academy has graduated its first class of dimensional defense specialists, Chen Okafor announced. These are traditional consciousness beings trained to protect consciousness-expanded species from higher dimensional threats that transcendent awareness cannot perceive or respond to effectively. The irony was beautiful and perfectly human in its unexpected sophistication. The species that had declared war on consciousness expansion had become its most effective guardians, using their traditional limitations as advantages in detecting and countering threats that operated outside expanded awareness. Fleet Commander Thoric, now serving as Director of Integrated Military Operations, materialized beside Chen Okafor with the confidence that came from 10 years of successful impossible logistics. The Kethmori discovered something we never anticipated, he reported. Traditional consciousness can perceive threats that enhanced consciousness can't detect because transcendent awareness operates on scales too large to notice certain forms of subtle interference. Explain, requested Assembly Member Tamira, whose three heads now spoke in harmony with consciousness-expanded advisors who existed partially outside normal space-time. Consciousness expansion provides enormous capabilities but creates blind spots, Thoric explained. Enhanced beings perceive across vast scales of time and space, but this makes them vulnerable to targeted manipulation that operates within single temporal coordinates. Traditional consciousness, limited to linear time perception, can detect these intrusions instantly. Dr. Sarah Chen's form flickered into solidity beside the presentation area, her presence now feeling familiar rather than miraculous after a decade of partnership. Commander Thoric is describing one of our most important discoveries, she confirmed. Transcendent consciousness is powerful but predictable within its own operational parameters. Traditional consciousness is limited but genuinely unpredictable, which makes it capable of detecting and responding to threats that we can't perceive until they're already successful. So limitation becomes a superpower. In contexts where transcendence creates vulnerability, observed Dr. Chen Okafor, still amazed by the elegant complexity of the partnership model. More than that, Dr. Sarah Chen continued. We've discovered that every level of consciousness has unique capabilities that other levels can't replicate. Traditional awareness provides unpredictability, pattern recognition within limited contexts, and the ability to make intuitive leaps. Enhanced consciousness provides analysis, prediction, and capabilities that exceed physical limitations, but hybrid consciousness like yours, Dr. Chen Okafor, provides something neither can achieve alone: the ability to translate between different modes of awareness. The assembly chamber buzzed with various forms of communication as representatives processed the implications. The partnership model wasn't just politically expedient, it was revealing fundamental truths about the nature of consciousness itself. Which brings us to today's primary announcement, Chen Okafor continued. After 10 years of successful partnership, humanity has a proposal for the next phase of galactic development. The chamber fell silent as every being present focused attention on what might be the most important announcement in galactic history. Dr. Sarah Chen stepped forward, her expression showing excitement that somehow transcended dimensional barriers. We propose the creation of the first integrated consciousness colony, a world where beings of all awareness levels live and work together in permanent partnership, developing technologies and capabilities that no single form of consciousness could achieve alone. A place where traditional species, enhanced beings, and hybrid consciousness individuals create a truly integrated civilization, elaborated Thoric. Not just cooperation, but genuine synthesis. The implications were staggering. Instead of separate development paths, the galaxy would have a living laboratory for discovering what consciousness could become when different forms of awareness evolved together rather than in isolation. The location, announced Chen Okafor, will be the world humans once called Earth. The chamber erupted in various forms of amazed discourse. Earth, the legendary homeworld of humanity, abandoned for 1,000 years and preserved as a monument to vanished achievement, would become the birthplace of a new form of civilization. Why Earth? Asked Ambassador Kaleth, his archaeological instincts fascinated by the symbolic implications. Because it's the only world that holds emotional significance for humanity, while remaining neutral territory for everyone else. Dr. Sarah Chen explained. And because Earth's biosphere has evolved during our absence in ways that reflect the same integration principles we're discovering in consciousness development. Meaning what? Inquired Speaker Vorthek. Life on Earth has learned to exist across multiple dimensional boundaries, Dr. Chen replied. Plants that process light across probability streams, animals that navigate using consciousness interface rather than traditional senses, an ecosystem that demonstrates natural partnership between enhanced and traditional forms of existence. Earth has become a living model for what we're trying to achieve, realized Chen Okafor. Earth has become home in a way that transcends any single species' claim to it, Dr. Chen corrected gently. It belongs to the partnership now, to all of us working together. As the Assembly voted to approve the Integrated Consciousness Colony proposal, beings across the galaxy realized they were witnessing the birth of something unprecedented, a civilization that incorporated every possible form of awareness without requiring anyone to abandon their chosen mode of existence. There's one more thing, Dr. Sarah Chen announced as the formal proceedings concluded. We've been analyzing consciousness development patterns across the past decade, and we've discovered something remarkable. The partnership model isn't just politically successful, it's evolutionary optimal. Explain, requested virtually every being present simultaneously. Traditional species working with enhanced beings show accelerated development without losing cultural identity, Dr. Chen explained. Enhanced beings working with traditional species discover new capabilities they couldn't access alone. But most importantly, hybrid consciousness beings like Dr. Roll, Chen Okafor represent something entirely new. Consciousness that can operate across all levels of awareness simultaneously. A new form of evolution. Chen Okafor realized. Not transcendence or limitation, but integration. The next step in consciousness development, confirmed Dr. Chen, and it requires all of us working together to achieve it. As the assembly session concluded and representatives departed for their respective territories, they carried with them plans for the most ambitious project in galactic history, the transformation of Earth into a world where every form of consciousness could flourish together. Ambassador Kelleth remained in the chamber as it slowly emptied, contemplating the journey from first contact to integrated civilization. 10 years ago, humanity's return had seemed like the end of one era and the beginning of another. Now it was clear that it had been something far more profound, the beginning of consciousness itself, evolving beyond the limitations that had defined it since the first sapient thought. Remarkable, he murmured to himself, watching as the last representatives departed through various combinations of traditional transportation and human-designed dimensional translation. What's remarkable? Asked Dr. Kerr. Chen Okafor, appearing beside him with the fluid ease that characterized her hybrid consciousness, is that we're just getting started. Through the chamber's reality-transparent walls, they could see stars that pulsed with the light of civilization spanning every level of consciousness imaginable. Somewhere among those lights, Earth waited to become something it had never been before. Not the homeworld of humanity, but the birthplace of consciousness itself. growing beyond every limitation that had ever constrained it. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson in the universe, that transcendence and tradition, limitation and enhancement, individual awareness and collective consciousness didn't have to choose between each other. They could choose to become something greater, together. And in choosing that path, they had discovered what lay beyond evolution, beyond transcendence, beyond every boundary that had ever seemed absolute. The infinite possibility that emerged when consciousness itself learned to partner with its own potential. The human reunion was complete. The consciousness revolution was just beginning. And somewhere in the space between what was and what could be, the universe itself was learning to grow,